Okay, guys, so I just dropped off a while ago again. Um, I was trying to say that I'm gonna share, and the rain just started. I'm hoping that this doesn't happen again.
Any backup?
Hey, are you guys hearing me?
Yes. Yep.
Yep.
Okay, I think it's delayed for me. O'Shane, if your internet is not stable, I think we should postpone.
Well, I'm going to just I'll moderate.
All right. Everything is in this the group with the moderator guide. Yeah.
Can you do the intros? You do a lot much better intros than me.
As long as the Zoom call is up at that time. But everything is in Telegram in the group with the moderator guide. The intros are there.
Okay, no problem. All right, so oh, wrong side. All right. Good day, everyone. Just giving couple more minutes for others to join. So please bear with us until then. Okay. And we're going to start at 6:10. Not a lot of people joined thus far, but we're going to start. Everything is going to be recorded on our social YouTube page, so they have the recording if there's anything. So we're going to start at 6:10. All right. Good day, everyone. We are about to start. I'm going to share my screen so you guys can see. I'll give you a moment. Is everyone seeing my screen?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm seeing.
Great, great. All right, so good day, everyone. This is our 10th career day, focusing on game development. We do have an exciting treat for you today. Today we're going to have two individual presenting. Well, it's going to be in a presentation slash discussion format. But I just want to take time to do a quick introduction of Jamaican developers. We've been around for over 4 years now, and we've been hosting quite a lot of events, career day, demo day. One of our co-founder, Nicholas Key, which is not here today, is tend to be one of the spokesperson outreach to help develop different tech communities in Jamaica. He also was the previous um, man, man, community leader for Meta Dev Circle, which is now called Aki Circle because of the old Facebook disassociation. So along myself, there will be Latifa Smell on this call, which is our communication officer. I'm pretty much Oshin Bailey, one of the co-founder. And we just want to, because of the interest of time, we do want to get into the meat of the presentation. So I'm going to give a quick intro, ask Latifa to do a quick introduction of Glenn and Graham, which are from the Jamaica Game Developers Society. Both of them has been doing quite a lot of work in the field, and they have been hosting events, and we'll drop the links to the JGDC DS in the chat, but Latifa, I'll hand it over to you to do the introduction.
Thank you, Shane. Good evening, everyone. As Shane said, we have two very experienced, very passionate game development enthusiasts with us this evening. Our panelists, Glenn Henry and Graham Reed, are both leaders of the Jamaica Game Developer Society. My apologies. Glenn is the founder and project director of Sprite Wrench Studio, a micro game development studio based right here in Kingston, Jamaica. If you are new to the community and you didn't know that we had a game studio, just type yes in the chat. Glenn is an experienced creative professional seeking to expand the ways that Jamaicans explore and interact with digital media. He aims to explore the ways that the Caribbean's cultural position can influence the stories we tell as well. And of course, how we can put more accurate narratives of the Caribbean out into the world, because of course, we're not all dreadlocked smoking ganja sitting on a beach. And so there are a lot more interesting and more nuanced perspectives that can be put out into the world based on the stories we tell through game development. Glenn has also devoted a lot of time to bringing a community of professionals together, to mentoring newbies in the game development industry, and creating spaces for them to learn from international experts through the Game Developers Society. With him, we also have Graham Reed, and Graham is a Jamaican born and raised art director and independent video game developer based in New York. He graduated from Campion College in 2008 and went on to the Savannah College of Art and Design, where he got a Bachelor in Fine Arts in 2012. Since then, he has been working as a freelance motion graphics designer and animator, and most recently concluded a 6-year stint as visual and product designer at Snapchat. Woohoo. Though he has been working on games all throughout that time, he has also started his own one-man studio called Graham of Legends, so you can check that out after the event. And he is now a full-time game developer alongside being one of the leaders of the Jamaica Game Developer Society. So let's give a warm welcome to both Glenn and Graham. As usual, I'll say just use the reaction icon on Zoom, and we can just put the celebratory emoji or the clap emoji. And I'll turn it back over to O'Shane. Glenn is going to give us a briefing of what the game dev industry is like, particularly in Jamaica, and then we're going to just segment into questions around, more questions around what the space is like and also how you can get into that space.
All right. Should I just jump into it, Shane, or do you want to tackle?
You can jump into it straight away.
All right. Well, evening, everyone, and thank you for the lovely intro, Latifa. As she said, my name is Glenn. I'm the face and fingers behind Sprite Wrench Studios. And just to kind of give the lay of land in really quick sound bites. Everyone understands that the game industry is really and truthfully a global industry. We have our players in the West, based around Los Angeles, California, as well as the powerhouses in the East, China, Taiwan, South Korea, Japan. And it really is a multidisciplinary field. A lot of people assume when they're looking at game development, it's just primary programming, but there are a lot of other skill sets and complementary skill sets that, fall under the creation of some of our favorite games, right? So one of the things I try to advocate for is really just awareness around the space and ways in which we as Jamaicans can contribute to it, all right? So that is one of the main missions behind the Jamaica Game Development Society, the JGDS. And I think we've been doing good so far, just in terms of informing people the various skill sets that I would have want to expand on. And I'm going to probably point this to Graham a bit for him to speak specifically on design. But we're talking programming straight up. That is people who are actually working to develop the project. So normally they're in Unity at this point, Unreal, so there's a lot of C#, C++. We also have, experienced persons coming in from audio, motion design, which is Graham's baby, and we have our QA product managers. So in a lot of ways, you can think of it as a traditional software development studio, generally, but focusing on a different end user. I think that is probably the best way I can really explain it. As it relates to Jamaica specifically, one of our core issues is, again, that advocacy, letting people aware of the space, letting them know of the opportunity there, and as well as kind of guiding them around some of the roadblocks. Some of the roadblocks attached. The space itself is still pretty new locally. There's a lot of independent studios, people who are trying to make the thing work. We have a lot more persons around than you initially suspect, but they're going to be solo kind of opportunities or solo operations that are rolling around. Yeah, I think I kind of did a very haphazard, quick and dirty summary of the game industry globally, as well as the disciplines they're in and what we are doing locally. Graham, I don't know if you want to just add some kind of context or kind of straighten out any kinks I might have raised a while ago.
I mean, I think you more or less covered it all then.
Cool. All right. Yeah, I'm just double checking the agenda just to see if there's anything else that I can, raise right now.
Well, we could just jump into question and answer. I think that's what you've gone through is fine. Pretty,
Okay.
pretty
All right.
broad enough that we haven't covered any of the questions that are coming, but we've gotten a good enough synopsis. So
Okay.
thank you.
And I'm just going to add some meat to what Glenn said. So a part of the effort of awareness that the JDGS has been doing, of course, there's a chat, a Discord chat that a lot of people could join, communicate, and share passion common to game development and share ideas. There's also like meetups, online meetups that they tend to keep, which you guys, if interested to learn more about game development, that's there as well. There are times where the Game Development Society also do events, and we do have a YouTube channel on. I'm not sure of. I'll send the link to the YouTube channel, but you'll find that there's a lot of crash courses on game development from beginner level to advanced level. So if you're interested in learning, anything about game development, you can check out their crash course on their YouTube page, as well as, join the community or talk to Graham or Glenn. So with that said, I hand over back to you, Graham and Glenn.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, O'Shane. So yeah, just to build out on that and kind of frame that. So the JGDS is a loosely structured grassroots organization focusing on the advocacy, education, and spotlight of Jamaican games and Jamaican game development, as well as the wider Caribbean. We try to host hackathons. We've been hosting the Global Game Jam Hackathon for the past 4 years, 5 years. What is time anymore?
Yeah, I feel like it's a lot longer than this.
Yeah, we've been doing it. We've been doing it for a while, and we try to meet up and just build out small projects, boost each other up accordingly. To that end, last year we started the Crash Course series, where we kind of mined our network globally to kind of invite persons to speak on the various disciplines within game development, their areas of strength. So we have a lot of people coming in and just talking about production, collaborating remotely, narrative design in free-to-play games, things like that. And they're on the Discord. They're on the Discord, and they're also on our YouTube channel. So we can link that accordingly. And yeah, we try and answer as many questions as we can, but honestly, it feels very open-ended right now because I'm not entirely sure which direction we want to go. If you want to dive deep into what the JGDS is doing, or if you want to dive deeper into what it is that Sprite Ranch or Game of Legend is doing, or if it's just general commentary around the industry as a whole. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. So I guess that's a good call to our audience for those persons who are interested. And if there's something specific that you want to see from the community, then join them on their Discord or even just let us know in this meeting. I'm going to start the panel, and I just want to remind everyone before I start, if you have any questions, you can either raise your hand or just post your question in the chat, and I'll just filter them in between the questions that we already have lined up. Okay, so the first thing we want to dive into is a little more on how you guys became interested. So we already know a little bit about your background and how you've come up, but we want to get deeper into what your influences were before we actually go into skills needed, education, honing skills. So just if you guys could both give a synopsis of what inspired you to get into game development, as well as what your current role is and what it entails. I guess we could start with Glenn.
All right, cool. My background, I have a computer science background. I went to UE, graduated there. I've always had an interest in computer science, programming, as well as games growing up. I'm also a self-taught artist, so I have spent a better part of my career trying to figure out a way to combine the two. That event inevitably kind of fell into gaming, especially around the 2010s, when we kind of had that first indie game boom. That would have been when certain things started getting democratized, so that you didn't necessarily need to have this deep relationship with a publisher or something to that effect to kind of get on storefronts such as Steam or Humble or such, right? That kind of showcased that there is an opportunity to kind of make the games that I want to make or experiment with them without necessarily traveling and uprooting my life. So that's what kind of kicked it all off. So it was just, cool, I can make games. All right, cool, I've made a game, now what? And kind of one thing led to another. So that's how things started. After a while, it was kind of lonely, so I kind of reached out to other friends and either badgered or bullied them to get into game design and development in some form. Eventually met up with Graham, as well as our other silent member. I guess if we're going to count founders, he's a silent founder, the third silent founder. And we just started hanging out and talking a lot on Discord, on Slack first, actually, inviting more people, and kind of grew naturally from that. In terms of what it is that I do, as project director, if you can't see me, but I'm putting it in quotes, I'm really the person who ideates and plans out and organizes the projects that the studio will put out. The studio itself is kind of my vehicle for exploring my creative ideas, projects, or freelance work. And as director, I'm in charge of making sure that, the goals are set, deadlines are met, and things work. I stylize myself as project director because I also recognize that it's impossible to do everything alone, even though we can try. So I subcontract out work as needed. I'll contract other people to do quality assurance. I'll contract people to do audio. I'll collab with other people to do various little things, and I'll mine my network for different testers, feedback, and that kind of thing. So it's really that spirit is why I kind of call the studio a micro-ish studio. And yeah, that's me, where I'm coming from, and where I am now. Graham?
Cool. So for me, how I got into games was, or into game development rather, was I've just always been heavily into video games. Like since I was about 3 or 4, I've been playing games from Super Nintendo, come right up to now. I've been playing consistently my whole life. But I obviously back in the 90s, I never thought that I could actually make games. That was just like something that, you saw at these big companies like Nintendo or whoever. But I was into art, so I'm on the opposite side of Glenn. I started as an artist first, and then kind of ventured into programming as a sort of necessity, really. But so in college, like I said, or like Latifah said, I studied motion graphics. But I had a friend, this guy named Robert, who is also Jamaican, also went to SCAD with me. He was studying game design, and he invited me essentially to partake in the Global Game Jam in 2012. And so from then, the three of us, me, him, and another guy, we made a game. And I was like, oh, you can actually, like, games aren't super exclusive anymore. It's not, you have to join a big company to make a game. I think we use this engine called Corona, which, I mean, that name is dead now. But yeah, so from that time, game development kind of opened up to me and to us, really. And of course, since then, you have infinite tutorials online, whether it's people's blogs or on YouTube or what have you. And then you have Unity, you have Unreal, you have all these, I'm sure we'll get into this, but you have all these other tools that you can use. And so between the Global Game Jam and just me having access to Unity, I just decided, Corona is now called Solar 2D. It exists still. Well, good to know. But yeah, because of all the tools and access that there was, I just decided, hey, I love games so much, I may as well try and make one. And so I've just been doing that since then. And that's what I'm doing now. Yeah, I'm just working on games by myself for the most part. My current game I'm working on, I'm doing the art, I'm doing the design, the programming, all of that. And then I'm working with these 2 really talented sound designers who are doing some really cool work with the game. So yeah.
Awesome sauce. That sounds good. So now that we have an understanding of how you guys got into it and what you're currently doing, it's easier now to deep dive into education and training, and that's is going to be very similar for both of you, especially since we don't have any courses here that are like specific to that. Even though Graham, you would have had opportunities to do that at SCAD. So before I get to Sean's question, let's just look at that in terms of persons who want to get into the space. Would you say it's better to go? What are your thoughts on the formal education versus self-taught routes? And what worked better for you, and also which one would you recommend?
I can go first this time. So I think it really depends on what in the game industry you want to do. Because, for example, if you want to go work at a big company, let's say you want to work at, like, I don't know, EA, working on FIFA or something. At jobs like that, you really need to get very specialized. So you wouldn't just be a game developer generally. You would be like a 3D artist, or you'd be a model rigger, or you could be like a narrative designer. There's dozens of jobs that you would fall under in one of those bigger companies. And so for something like that, I would probably say, I mean, honestly, all these things you can just learn online, whether it's by YouTube or actually paying for online classes. But for more of those things, I would say it would be beneficial to actually join some kind of school that will teach that, because you would get access to actual like links. And I mean, as we know, links runs everything. So you would get a lot of, like, from the professors and all that, you just get a lot of links and resources to these other companies. But if you want to go the indie route, then I mean, I personally don't have any regrets just kind of teaching myself how to, if you're that kind of person, I should say, if you're a person who works well being self-taught, then I think it's completely doable. And if you can afford to, or if you have friends who are willing to work alongside you or have the same passion you do, then it's even more beneficial to work with people. So if you want to handle the programming and somebody else handles the music and then someone else handles the arts, then that's totally a good way to go. What do you think, Lan?
I mean, I more or less echo all of that because myself, I'm self-taught. Like I have a comp sci background, but that didn't necessarily teach me like how to make a game. Right? That was trolling through forum posts and Reddit
I think
and
a
all
lot
of
of
that.
persons would be able to relate to that.
Right? Yeah, yeah. It kind of gave me the tools, but it didn't necessarily teach me how to build it. And that was only one half of the learning, because there is the design component that a lot of people tend to overlook. Because you can move a box with your arrow keys, that's great, but designing a game in such a way that moving that box feels good and feels fun,
right,
is like another skill set that tends to be overlooked. So yeah, self-taught is pretty much probably the better route. I was discussing this earlier with another acquaintance, earlier this week with another acquaintance. The general advice is get a generalized degree and then build out a portfolio as soon as you can. So the portfolio will get you through the door. The degree will show that you can do it, but the portfolio will secure the job.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, that's definitely consistent with the advice across events in terms of portfolios. So for anyone who on this call who hasn't started building their portfolio, I would advise you to take note of these reinforcements. All right, so so we've established that it makes more sense to build the portfolio and that it's a self-taught or the indie route is very viable, but for those persons who may still want to do formal, are there any viable, do they have boot camps for game development the same way they have them for web development, or are there any particular schools that are really popular in the game dev ecosystem?
Well, I know that there are a number of boot camps that are kind of being set up to support marginalized developers right now. I think Code Coven has a rotating program. I believe the International Game Developer Association Foundation also has a couple programs that might be there. Those are the first two that kind of come to mind when we think boot camp. But I do know that a number of prominent universities do offer specialized degrees. I mean, the first one that comes to mind right now is Full Sail. I know they're out there. I know that they seem to be doing good things. I know that they kind of had a sticky situation at one point, but I can't speak to too much detail there.
Okay, yeah, I'm definitely familiar with Full Sail.
Graham, what about SCAD?
I mean, I didn't really look into the SCAD program that much. What I do know is that SCAD was heavily focused on actual game design. So like, being a game designer, what goes into the design of the game, not the visual design, just the actual game itself. And so if that's what you're interested in, then I mean, you could look into SCAD, but also SCAD is very expensive, not with the SCAD, unless you get a scholarship. But yeah, I don't know. Like there are also there's a lot of just prominent, for example, YouTubers who do have their own paid courses, which I've actually got invited to one, and it was pretty thorough. It's a guy who he's essentially sharing all his knowledge from how he made a game. It has a whole suite of Unity tutorials and tips on marketing, on just and the whole thing about being a full-time indie game developer. So I mean, yeah, there are a lot of smaller courses, but as for the universities, I can't really speak too much on that.
Yeah.
But I would say it, like, really, if you know what you're good at, I would say focus on that and not necessarily just game design. So like Glenn was saying, if you do want to do programming, you can get a more generalized programming degree and then go from there.
Right. So figure out the niche first.
Right. And if you just want to be overall just an indie, like a more of a generalist, you can do a lot of things. Then I mean, at that point, I would still say pick one thing, which is your niche, and then kind of grow from there. Like at the end of the day, I'm still an artist first and foremost, and then I let that dictate what I do with my games.
Yeah, that's touching on a different area kind of entirely, which is finding out like what is a creative drive behind your work and kind of doubling down on that.
Right.
Yeah.
Some good questions in the chat.
Yes, Danidre. Well, first Sean was asking how consuming game development is.
I have a very quick answer for that. It's very time consuming.
Yes.
I don't
Like
know how else to put that. It's just very.
I'd
Or rather,
say,
if you're doing it as an
Can you
indie,
give
it's
an
very time
estimate?
consuming.
Can you give like a estimate? Like, for example, a website probably take X amount of time for game development. Like, what's the average work week look like for you to just even design the smallest amount of details on a particular shot or something?
I mean, so it depends, right? Like, it depends first and foremost on the scope of your game and the type of game you're making. Like, if I'm just going to remake Snake, the simple Snake, depending on who you are, it might take a day or a week to do. But if you're trying to make like the next fortnight or something, then that's obviously going to take like a lot more time. And I think because to compare to web design and web development, it's like everybody knows what the website is, and it's the scope is, unless you're trying to make like a commerce thing, the scope is typically a lot more limited. And so I feel like those jobs would tend to be more quick of a turnaround, whereas video games, not only have to make the thing work, it has to be fun and it has to like not crash. And you have to market it, and it's like it's just a lot of jobs in one. And even if you do have a person or a teammate for each of those roles, it's still very time consuming.
Yeah, to kind of just like frame it in like time and to ground the concept a little bit more. It's akin to, whereas you building a website is 1, 2, 3. When you're making a game, you're building the website, then you're also planning out the QA for that, and then you're also planning out the marketing as an indie at the very least. You're planning out the marketing for that. So that's awareness campaign surrounding the website that you just built. You're also building out, support after launch for the website you just built. And so those are the other factors that are coming in when you ask for a timeline. But if you want like a rough estimate, I'll point you to a game called Nuclear Throne by Lambert. That game was initially released in early access in 2013 and did not go completely out of early access until 2015. So that was 2 years of development for relatively simple. It looks a lot simpler than it is. for a team of what was it, 3, 4? I think there was like 2 full-time staff and then like 2 subcontractors. So yeah.
And I mean, I again, that's like it really depends on the type of game, because that game that Glenn is referring to is very mechanics driven. So it's a lot of playtesting and trial and error. Versus if you're making like a visual novel, for example. I mean, Glenn, you can speak more to this, but I figure it's more a lot of just figuring out your story and the visuals to it, and then you can more easily just crank the game out. Still not in like a week, but it's not 2 years, I would assume.
Yeah. I do get that. I remember some of the session that you guys had. I think there was a session where there was a sound engineer to figure out how they came up with the different sounds for the game and how to match it with the game, that exact current gameplay. I think there was a session about storyboarding. So I do know there's a lot of different components in building it out, as well as the textual rendering and so forth. It's very intriguing, the amount of time that it's spent, and then the willingness from the team to really push through, to get the game out. Because I've seen, I all heard of where games take like 2 to 5 years to even do the first beta release, and to work on something that long. Yeah, once it's out, you feel motivated, fulfilled, whatsoever. But that, constant trying to push to get it out, it's quite intriguing how that may play on the psyche.
Yeah. Agreed. It's a lot of times it feels like a marathon and not a sprint as an indie. Maintaining well, not just drive, but maintaining, ensuring you don't necessarily burn yourself out. Because it's very, as a programmer, going from programming side, it's very tempting to kind of just dump a weekend, just spend the entire weekend and just churn out a concept and call it done. But then at the end of that period of time, when you start showing it off to people, they're like, they start using it in very weird ways, or things aren't clear, and stuff like that. And as if you're a new indie, that can be frustrating, that can be disheartening, but it's part of the process. So I feel like we haven't I feel like we haven't given like a concrete answer, but there are a lot of factors that go into it. So
okay.
I see another question. Am I skipping a question? DeAndre, would you do it as a hobby with another job until you start making money off of it? Yes, I would do it as a hobby. I wouldn't even call it a hobby. Treat it as a side hustle. That's more or less what I'm doing. I have 2 jobs juggling right now, but they're complementary. I have my freelancing and my publishing that is pushed through Sprite Range, but I do have a day job, and I'm not going to tell anybody to just jump both legs into the water of indie development without a safety net. I'm not telling anybody to do that. Graham?
I mean, I would say start as a hobby, just because it's less pressure to actually make something successful. If you start as a hobby, you can just make something, put it out there, and then it's like, yeah, you made something, and you realize you just get used to actually making things and sending it to your friends and making them play it. But for essentially up until last year, I was doing it on the side of my actual day jobs. And I definitely recommend that until either you make money off of it or until you can get funding from whichever avenue, whether it's like funding for the game itself, or let's say you just saved up for how much of a year is, say you have that money put down or whatever, so you can actually tackle it full time.
Okay. Yeah, that's quite a bit. All right, well, that's good. Let me just check. There are no more questions in the chat for now. So yes, we can okay. We have Danisha, we'll get to that advice a little later down. But I'm definitely going to get to that question later down. Okay, so moving on from education and training, let's talk about some of the skills that are needed. If I know game development is wide and there are a lot of niches, as we've said, but specific to your roles as a project director and as a game developer and art director, what are some of the soft skills that you need that help you to be good at what you do?
Time management, but I'm not entirely sure I would call that a soft skill.
That's a hard skill.
Yeah, that's the very first thing. As part of being an indie, as well as my circumstance in terms of juggling multiple things, I've gotten, I want to say, pretty good at compartmentalizing time, my tasks, and breaking them into chunks and blocks, and that has allowed me to kind of set up roadmaps, future roadmaps, because I know exactly how long it's going to take me to do an X task. So if I need to do mock-ups for a screen, for the home screen for a game, I can estimate that out and I can block that up over a certain number of days. So that has really been the most important skill for me personally. Outside of that, it is really, how do I break that down further? Because that segues into project management as a whole. And I tend to kind of look at my entire life as one big project. So that entire set of skills kind of informs everything else. Yeah, I think that's my contribution to project management and time management. Graham?
For me, I'd have to say that it's highly beneficial that you know, one, how to sell whatever you're working on. I don't mean just like physically sell it to get money, but I mean whether verbally or visually sell your project to people, whether it's potential buyers or it's just a community of your community, or it's publishers, or you're trying to just get a job. It's really good to know how to sell your work and to sell yourself. And then also tied to that is speaking from my past experiences, it's definitely beneficial to just know how to network. And I mean, people always think of networking as like this stuffy thing you go and do in a room and just kind of meet people and pass around business cards and all that. But it's, for me, it's more so like just finding people who you are either on your level or sometimes below your level or above your level. It doesn't really matter. It can be, you're not trying to, networking isn't you just trying to get like high profile people in your email list or anything. It's just about building out your network of people that you can help in the future and people who can help you in the future, whether they know somebody at Microsoft so you can get a job there, get onto Xbox, or you know someone who's looking for a programmer and you can get them into that job. Like, I think just being part of a community and having your own personal network is invaluable, really. That's how I'd say I've gotten a lot of the way where I am now.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd also echo Graham's statement about, knowing how to sell and how to network. One of the biggest advantages or the silver lining for the past year is that when everybody was online, we were able to kind of bridge that gap with the wider network, the wider gaming industry sphere. So attending things like GDC, PAX, things like that, which were previously in-person only, they now have online options. You're able to be a part of that conversation. You're able to go to those events digitally, virtually, and attend different workshops and different things of that nature. And because you're doing that digitally, you are flexing that networking muscle. You're basically, building, if not friendships, acquaintanceships. That's the best way I'm going to word it there. And that is where you get a lot of information. That's where you learn a lot of things that you necessarily wouldn't have learned in school or if you were physically in the States. Those relationships become invaluable over time. I think I just said a lot of words to that some comes up to be, don't be a jerk.
Yeah, but I was going to say, like, just be a good person, really.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I definitely agree with that. And they do say it's not only your network is your net worth, but it's also that there are a lot of there are a lot of things that you could learn just from constantly pushing yourself and putting yourself in spaces where you're not the smartest person in the room. And so it's always a good idea to just not be, one of the person with the least expertise in the room, and put yourself in more of those situations so you can absorb as much, especially in the earlier days of your career. Moving on from that, well, okay, before we move on from that, what's the general state of that in the space? In terms of, like, there's this general cliche that developers will be very talented, but they can't articulate. Is it just just as the same within the niche of game development, or is there more of a concerted effort to help persons to work on that skill?
But what do you mean exactly?
Being able to sell, the skill of sales, being able to articulate the value of their products and communicate that to with whoever their stakeholders are.
Are you asking about communication skills? Like,
she's mostly asking about the statement or the notion of articulating oneself and the product, the value from the customer point of view instead of the developer point of view. Is that something you find in the game industry as well, where the game developers are focusing more on the game development instead of talking about the game to from the customer point of view, and make it so well structured in the sense that the layman can understood and a conversation about it. If that's what you're saying, Latifah.
Well, layman as well as investors. I just want to know what the state of that is in game development niche. Like, does it live up to the cliche, or since game development is a very large industry, are there persons or groups or organizations that make it their effort to help game developers with developing that skill?
I'm not 100% sure I fully grasp the question, but I'm going to try and answer, and then I'm going to see if I land. So the idea of communication and being able to communicate a thought clearly to anyone, not just in technical jargon, is always a priority. We find that regardless of discipline, if it's game development, if it's front-end web development, back end, having that skill in your toolbox is always a bonus, right? That skill alone will promote you outright. In game development, it's especially important because 90% of game design is communicating things to the player, if it's audio, visually, or mechanically. there's a constant feedback loop that's going on. And when I mentioned the point about, game design earlier, that is really what I was trying to highlight, because as developers and coming from computer background, you tend to think of a problem as solved as soon as the first solution comes along. So it's as long as it works. So it's 1 + 1 = 2. It's done. And then a senior developer will look at it and say, oh, you have to, make affordance for these edge cases. But in game development, in game design, you have to be very, very careful with that from the beginning, because if you set up the input controls in a certain way, for example, you make the character respond on input down versus input release, like button down instead of button release, that directly impacts game feel immediately. But from a technical standpoint, both work and they're effectively the same answer. So I feel like that doesn't completely answer your question, but it is the same spirit of communication that's vital. Like, you are talking to somebody. You need to be able to consider their viewpoints, have that empathy, and be open to, that feedback, that entire through line. Yeah, I'm not sure if that answered the question. Tell me if I'm off base, Latifa.
It's okay. So that's like part of it. And the important part, we're good. And I'm gonna assume, well, see, you said it's always important to be able to do that type of communication, that is generally going to be the same across developers, that they just usually struggle with that, and it's something that they need to work on, or it's, one of the points that they need to work on. But moving away from that, we're gonna get into, we've already done some of the pros from just talking about it, but what would you say are some of the drawbacks for working in game development? And for each of you, for your specific roles, what's the part of it that you enjoy the most?
I would say that drawback of it is that it's a very hard job. Like, this is not even just being an indie developer, but I mean, just to make successful games, whether you're a team of 1 or a team of 500, it's not like a guaranteed, hey, you're going to make $1 million ever. And so I think it really takes someone who is passionate about what they do to actually stick with it. Because I mean, there's a lot of easier ways to make money. Like, if you're just in game development for the money, then I would say just go somewhere else. Yeah, there's a lot of ways to make more money. But outside it being that challenging, I think that's what I enjoy the most is simply just having people play my games and just seeing them actually enjoying it and going through different emotions, and that's honestly what fuels me. Like, it's like, I think games are not like anything else in that, sure, you can go and watch a movie on Netflix, or you can listen to an album, or go watch just go to a movie theater or read a book, but none of those are interactive, and it's not, none of those are interactive mediums. And just being able to actually create something like that, I think is for me, is very powerful.
Yeah.
From my side, the part about my job that I hate the most is cutting off flow. So I mentioned time boxing earlier, One of the things that I find most difficult about the job is when you are working on a part of the project, not a feature or a task, and you slip into that flow state. You're vibing, ideas are coming up really, really quickly. You're finding solutions to the problems. You're making progress, but because you have so many hats to juggle, you kind of have to stop, and like training yourself to stop is hard. Switching gears is hard, and that is probably the part that I hate the most. I don't know if
Very
anybody
good point.
yeah, I don't know if anybody has that experience. Like you're working on a problem, and you're coding it out, and you think you're making progress. You're on page, you've hit page 5 on Google. You're on Stack Overflow. You're working through it. And you're making progress, and you're feeling good about yourself. But then your alarm goes off, and it's like, okay, you have to wrap this up now. 15 more minutes, and then you have to go on to the next task, and that now has to be carried over into the next day, or have to manage it some other way. That's probably the hardest part for me. The part I love the most. The part I love the most is actually just coming up with new ideas. That is something that is relatively natural for me. I come up with ideas pretty quickly. If I'm playing a game, I like a concept that probably spirals out into an idea. I've kind of had to train myself to, rather than immediately start working on it, dump it into a file to look back at later. So those are my two answers.
Interesting. Yeah, I've definitely had those times where I'm really just getting into work and then I have to wrap up, or you end up working all the way into the night and you realize that something else didn't get done, but you were enjoying yourself so much that you didn't even realize how much time had passed.
Yeah, I was going to say that second one is more me. Like my time management isn't as great as Glenn's, and so I've never run into the problem of losing my flow state, but I do run into the problem of it being 2 a.m. and I'm still working.
Yeah. All right. So, before I get to Shane's questions in the chat, I want to I have about 3 more questions on, 3 more planned questions from the presenter guide. So one, I want to address common tools and technologies that you guys use on a daily basis, whether it is for delegation project management or it's for actual game development.
I could list out some. I mean, for me specifically, every day I use Unity, which is my game engine of choice, and I use a lot of essentially the whole Adobe suite, so Photoshop, Illustrator, After Effects, and Premiere really. And then for project management, I just use Notion because it's basically a Kanban board. It's like Trello and Google Docs and Google Sheets and all those stuff into one.
Yeah, Notion is definitely very powerful.
Yeah, Notion is great. And then Discord just to communicate with people.
Mm-hmm.
All right. For me, it's not Notion. I used to do it, mostly because I like that ability to set recursive tasks, and such. That's my go-to. Other bits of software I end up using is Google Sheets. I use that extensively for my game design docs. And that's just keeping track of some of the ideas that crop up and trying to define, core requirements for the projects and etc. Other tools I end up using a lot, would be Clip Studio Paint for art and just Visual Code text editor right now. Unlike Graham, I have not joined the cult of Unity as yet, though he is an ardent supporter. But I'll get there eventually.
Okay.
So wait, Glenn, so what do you use instead of Unity for your game engine of choice?
I use a mishmash of horrible languages, right? Well, it's JavaScript really, I should say. I code and deploy in JavaScript. I either wrap in Electron or Cordova as needed. Both of those I would not tell any newbie to pick up right now because
Basically, just don't follow Glenn. Is what
don't
he's
follow
saying.
me. Don't follow me.
Okay, noted.
Okay. All right. So, do any of you guys have a role model or mentor that helped you along the way, along your journey, or do you have coaches that you work with or have worked with in the past?
I think if I had to name somebody as a role model, that would probably be Rami Ismail. He's somebody I looked up to a lot in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
He is a great advocate for game development in emerging territories. And before the world ended, he would routinely visit different territories and kind of boost or encourage the game dev scenes in those areas. So his career has meant a lot to me. Outside of that, I don't necessarily have a particular mentor. But if I have to say other people I look up to, it would be like Graham and Bobby and the other, I guess, yeah, senior members of the JGDS. The fact that they're there and they're still, putting out games and still working with the system and navigating the forest with me means a lot. So yeah.
Graham?
Well, gee. I mean, also similarly for me, Rami Ismail has been like a big inspiration because he was one of those people who, from 2012 or 13, you'd be seeing his name along with his then time business partner JW. But Rami was more like the voice and the business person behind it all. And like Glenn said, he'd be traveling around the world, giving talks, and really advocating for, because he's from the Netherlands, but he's Arabic, Glenn, right? I don't remember exactly. I think he's Egyptian, I believe.
Yeah,
And
he's Dutch Egyptian, I believe.
yeah. And so he is a big advocate for essentially North America and Europe and Canada. And so I was from very early on, like I was saying earlier with the networking thing, don't like one piece of advice I have for everybody really is just don't be afraid to actually just message people, because from what I've found, people are very, like, game developers are very friendly people generally. And that's how I actually met Rami, just on Twitter by just sending him a DM. But to not steal Glenn's answer, I would say this guy named Mike Bithell. He's just another game developer out of the UK, and he just a generally great guy, has a cool game studio, and started with this very small game called Thomas Was Alone, which was like a game about shapes. It's about like a square, a rectangle. And somehow he took that and made a whole game development career out of that. And that was inspiring to me. But like Glenn, I don't really have any mentors or anything like that. It's just more so leaning on my peers, whoever's there at the time, bouncing ideas off them, or asking people who have been in the game for tens of years more than me, asking them for advice. And also Glenn, I guess.
Yeah, I'd also just piggyback as well. Rami actually offers consulting and like just quick meetings to pretty much anyone. He has a booking set up
Mm-hmm.
on his Twitter, and he offers discounted rates to developers from the global south and third world regions and stuff like that. So yeah, he's a prime example of somebody who just asked.
Awesome. As I know we have JGDS, but that's also one of the things that's a recurring theme across these meetups, the importance of mentorship, and also who persons who are available to offer that, and as well as how to approach those persons. Moving away from that, so we're just gonna add just two more things before I get into Shane's questions. It's gonna be general preparation. So, well, I guess we could merge these both into one. It's what what advice do you have for persons in terms of, well, you've already spoken to how they can get into the role, but for those persons who are there, maybe very much at the noob stage, advice for honing your skills, how to what are some of the communities outside of JGDS, well, including JGDS, where they can find persons um, who would be interested in collaborating, but also how they can open themselves up to the different niches within game development. Hopefully that's not too much.
I mean, I don't know where specifically, but there are dozens, if not hundreds, of game development and game development adjacent Discord channels where you'll have a lot of like-minded people, also people who could become mentors, and just a lot of knowledge, really. It's like a lot of knowledge. And then also, I'm a big advocate of just learning from YouTube, but not just from a YouTube video, but from a lot of these people have their own communities. And essentially the short answer is just communities, really.
Yes. Yeah, a lot of them do have communities linked in their description.
Yeah.
All right, so let me, before I go to Danitra's question, well, Glenn, do you have anything to add to that first?
Nothing really. I mean, within the JGDS Discord, we actually do have a thread where we kind of just list out communities to join. We mentioned gig,
Typically on Discord.
Yeah, typically on Discord. We mentioned stuff, places like Gig, which is Game Industry Gathering, as well as some of the other niche Discords. There's the Dream Dust Discord, which is our illustrator, animator, well, not ours, but it is an illustrator animator group coming out of the event that started in 2020. We also have TOC in play. I think that link works. Last I checked.
I know Junie has her own game production server as well.
Yes, game production community is there as well. So yeah, it's just something that we build out as we go through. We didn't link to Austin's Discord, or the link expired. But yeah, there are multiple Discords. There are a couple other niche ones that I can't recall right now, but yeah, they're there. They're all there. So you can pop in, ask a couple questions, see if you can dig around and find something.
So a good place to start is JGDS.
Yeah.
I mean, also there's an official Unity Discord, and I'm sure there's one for Unreal and those kind of things. So if you do want to, I've definitely gone to the Unity Discord and gotten help before, easy.
Okay. All right, so moving on, I'm going to go through Shane's questions and then we'll end with your advice for university students. So firstly, how easy is it to get a job in game development? And are most of the jobs based on contractual projects or full-time jobs?
All right. So how easy is it to get a job in game development? Industry proper is kind of opaque. A lot of established studios right now kind of require you to successfully ship the game, normally a AAA title, and they're very specific about that. However, there are a number of initiatives that, are looking for, diverse talent to join. So there are opportunities out there. You're probably better served looking for an indie company to join. And in that case, it will definitely be a contract for whatever period of the project itself. You'll find that right now, as a Jamaican in the game development space, you will be primarily operating as an independent. You're closer to an entrepreneur than a specialized skill set. All right. So you will have to do a lot of advocacy for yourself, marketing yourself, and know how to sell your skills. So circling back to generalized degree and portfolio, because those are what you're going to really be marketing yourself with. Most projects are contractual or full-time. Again, really depends on the studio. Some of them want to lock you in for longer periods of time versus others. There are a couple horror stories about, I think EA is a particular example, about companies where they will they'll skill up for production, and then once they hit gold master or somewhere closer to that, they'll just trim the staff, put them off, because they've only gotten funding pretty much for the life cycle of the project and not necessarily for the support. I'm not sure how often that practice is still going on. People have been advocating for it extensively, but I think up till, was it this year, there was a situation with Activision and some QA teams that were basically ousted right after they had moved to the state to start working there. So yeah, employee advocacy is kind of a mixed bag right now. So yeah, I'm not sure if you want to add anything to that, Graham.
Yeah, I think how easy it's to get a job. It's either I'd say it's as easy or as hard as getting a job anywhere else. Like it's heavily based on your portfolio from what I've seen. Like even if someone says, oh, we need 3, 4, 5 years of experience, if you come with a really good portfolio, people will notice that and make exceptions. But also, like Glenn was mentioning, a lot of the bigger companies, they might actually want you to be like relocate your whole life to that state or to that country, if it's US or Canada or wherever. And then they might just drop you. You never know. So it really depends on the company. And as for our most jobs based on contractual projects or full-time jobs, it might actually be, especially being in Jamaica, it might be easier to get contract work, which could then transition into a full-time job, or just to get your foot even into the industry at large. But of course, for me, I'm just working on my own stuff, as is Glenn.
Okay, so in terms of, we'll come back to the difference between states versus Jamaica, but what about pay scale? And I guess we could bring that into this. Do you guys have an idea of what the average pay scale is? Not scale, well, yeah, ranges for jobs in game development.
I have no idea. I'm sorry, I really don't.
It really depends on the position.
It depends on the position and the company. Because I mean, of course, I've worked up here. When I was doing motion graphics, I worked at small boutique studios and I worked at like ad agencies. And then I worked at Snapchat, which is the tech sector. And the pay range for the same job has dramatically, it's like a roller coaster. It could range anywhere. It could be literally tens of thousands of difference just for that one job based on the company or sector you're in. But for game development, I'm not entirely sure. I do feel like programmers though generally get a decent pay, like across the board.
Yeah. Glenn?
I mean, I can probably speak to producer project management positions a bit more. I think I had done some scouting, and in that discussion, they were saying something about lower end 50K to upwards of 80K with about 5 years of experience in a similar role or something like that, 5+ years experience in a similar role. So,
do you know anything about more entry level jobs, Glenn? Like junior positions?
Not specifically, unfortunately.
Okay.
So when you say 50K to 80K, that's per year USD, or you're talking JMD per month?
No, that was USD price.
USD.
Those are USD prices.
Okay.
No. Those are USD prices. But you'll find that, like Graham mentioned, it really depends on the company. Indie companies probably wouldn't be able to match that. That was a price for an established studio with over 10 years.
And it also depends on where it is too, because I'm in New York, so everything here, because everything here is so expensive, they pay you more. But for the same exact role, if you're in, like, I don't know, Atlanta or something, or maybe not Atlanta, but if you're in Florida or Dallas, yeah, it's like the pay range would be a lot less because the cost of living is more affordable. Yeah.
So Glenn, do you working from Jamaica, are you mostly working with Jamaicans, or do you do a lot of work with persons from overseas in terms of like contracted projects? And does that include persons from other parts of the Caribbean?
So it's a mixed bag. Currently I have a contract, a producer contract with a company based out of Canada, but that is very light project management oversight. I do have a lot of contact with people in the Montreal space, but I think my active contracts are with Jamaicans in terms of building projects or prototypes that they feel that they can use.
That's good. That's good to hear. All right, so I think that covers Oshin's question. So our last question before we wrap up, since we're a good amount over 7 this evening, is what, for both of you, what's your advice, or what would be like your final words or of advice to not to just the persons who are new in the space, but the persons who are interested in getting into the space?
I would say try to really figure out what you're passionate about, and just go, like, fully immerse yourself with that. And also, YouTube is your best friend. Don't be afraid to learn.
My advice is probably just start. Like, if you have an idea for a game, start. Know that you probably will have to scale it back, way back, and way back. Like, say that twice, because even the largest, 3 times, even the largest idea you have, the smallest idea you have, is more than likely too large. Like, start simple, like Snake or Pong, and then
I started with Pong and went from there.
Yeah.
And it still felt too big.
Yeah. And then based off of that, expand your skills, find what your interests are, and kind of use that to discover where your strengths lie, and let that be your guide as you build up that portfolio.
Awesome. Ditto on both of those, actually. I've seen so many persons just get really enthusiastic and start big, and then just lose the momentum.
Yeah, lose interest.
Yeah, which is not good. So yeah, I definitely reinforce that. Well, thank you, Glenn. Thank you, Graham, for spending this time with us. We're gonna have to do some editing on the YouTube video to add the slide back, given the issues with the internet. But we're glad to have you, and glad for all of the tips you've shared. Actually, we do have volunteers on board now, working on blog articles for the events. So it will be available, the live stream will be available on YouTube, but we'll also have a blog article to organize all of the tidbits and tips that you've given or shared this evening, for those persons who can't go through the 1 hour 25 minute recording. But we're very much grateful for you sharing your expertise and your experiences. I guess before we move into any housekeeping, well, for one, I'd like to shout out the persons who joined us on the YouTube live stream today. And then, secondly, do you guys for Jamaica Game Developer Society have any do you have any upcoming events or plans that you want to mention?
From the JGDS side, we have a bi-weekly meetup, virtual meetup. We just hang out, talk about our projects, talk about what's been happening in the industry, and just kind of vibe. If you guys want to pop in and just hear people ramble a little bit about their projects, you're more than welcome to. So join the Discord and check that out. I think our next session should be next week, Saturday, if everything goes well. Yeah.
Okay, great. And for those who are on Zoom, hold on, I just lost the chat. Okay. For those of us who are on Zoom, the link for the JGDS is in the chat, as well as their YouTube channel. And Graham also just linked his website. So check that out. I've also posted the website on the YouTube live stream as well. So Glenn, if you could just drop, yeah, I think you have a station head portfolio, am I correct?
I have multiple things, but the quickest way of finding me is just plugging in SpriteWrench.com in Google. I'll also place a link here. That should, oh, some stuff is broken. Yeah, that's pretty much me. But if you type in SpriteWrench in Google, you'll find me. I'm SpriteWrench on pretty much everything.
Awesome. All right, thank you both. And huge thanks to everyone else that's on the call. Of course, none of these events would be possible without our sponsors, Vertis Technology Solutions Limited, Particular Presence Technologies Limited, and Asub Limited. And you'll find links to these to their websites on our community forum, also on our social media pages. For those of you who have projects, since we're in the business of talking about portfolios, we do have a couple demo days coming up. Demo days will be running continuously. So if you have projects that you're interested in sharing, do let us know. And of course, our next event is going to be next week, demo day next week with Colin Campbell. And we may also have a game dev feature, so look out for that. I think in terms of housekeeping matters, Jad, if you weren't at our last event, you'll know that you wouldn't know, but so I will be stepping away from the community for a while, and so to O'Shane, and so you will be seeing new faces for events. We'll be having Tremaine Buchanan as the host of events going forward, and Asana Alsaba as co-moderator and co-host. So just look out if you see new faces on the call next time. Don't be don't be shocked. And also we're looking for additional volunteers for marketing as well as graphic design. So we have a lot of work to do in those areas. It's not just Google Summer of Code. Well, Google Summer of Code, we haven't checked up on in a while, so we need to check up on that. But we have a lot of things that are suffering from lack of resources. So if you know anyone that's interested in joining the team, or if you are, just reach out to us. Of course, you guys know you can find myself and Ashane on social media or in any of the group chats. It's probably 20 of them now or so. So just let us know. And with that, yeah, we can adjourn. Ashane, before we end the call, does Seeker, are there any updates for Seeker?
No. So there's a couple of jobs that I will be posting in the coming days. In fact, some of the jobs I have shared in the secret chat as well as the jobs group, the Telegram group. I'll post them in the Jamaica developers community, so you can look out for those. In terms of well, this is a question for Glenn and Graham, which one of the questions I wanted to ask in terms of showcasing like what your members done, like games that Jamaicans, developed or participate in. Is there anywhere we can find different games that developed in Jamaica or by Jamaicans or the Caribbeans? Quick question. Sorry to throw this out in the last minute.
Glenn, we have
Ye-
this somewhere in the Discord, don't we? Like a page or something.
We do have it on a page, but there's also a playlist that I've been collating, curating for a little while. This includes a bunch of projects from everyone. So I can post that in the chat.
Okay, that would be cool. But that's it from my side. Back to you.
Yeah, we're pretty much done from here. So have a good evening, everyone. Please keep safe. Continue to be cognizant of the pandemic. It's not yet over, but yes, we're fully adjourned. So
All right. But then take care, everyone. What pandemic? Wow. Well, someone said in the meeting the world ended. So, wow. In any case, take care, everyone, and all the best.
Thanks for having us.
Yep.
lol. Graham says, "What's a pandemic?" Not my question. Okay. The game dev list is here, so I'm gonna just post that in the chat group, and you can